Welcome to the Upside Investor Series, the podcast where we talk all things property, investment, and how to get the absolute best out of your assets. I'm Sarah, Director of Upside Property Management, and this series is designed for property owners, investors, and anyone looking for more smart, more strategic decisions with their portfolio. But first, grab a coffee. Today I'm joined by our Senior Property Manager, Kate Taylor, bringing real on-the-ground insight into what actually drives results. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you ended up in property management?
Of course. So I probably started my working career properly when we moved up north and set up plumbing and drainage business, myself and my husband. That kind of got me into building industry and working with tradies and being in the background, setting up appointments, all of that stuff. Loved it. We moved from there to Darfield. So completely from top of the north to the middle of the south, but the earthquakes actually ended that for us, and we moved to Hamilton. Ended up in Hamilton kind of by luck, really, and I signed up with a recruitment agency and gave them all my background, and they rang and said, we think property management might be for you, and I said, I know nothing about property management, like nothing. Anyway, I interviewed. They thought I'd be great. I interviewed with a big company here in Hamilton, and got the job. And I blimmin' loved it from the minute I started. Yeah, it's really cool. So awesome. It was just luck. It was just...
Yeah. And did you start out doing like straight into property management, or did you start from a...
I was taking over from someone who had given 3 months notice. So I was really lucky in that I got to work with him for 3 months. Side by side, and learn that portfolio without being thrown in the deep end, which was fantastic. It was a really big portfolio, and it was pretty scary the day he left, but yeah, it was cool. Straight into property management in the deep end.
Nice. Cool. And then from your experience, what do you think separates a average property manager and a great property manager?
I honestly think it's just the ability to pick up the phone and have a conversation with someone. It's really easy, and has been for a while now, to hide behind a text or an email. And I honestly think if most of our landlords actually just want to have a conversation with you, it's way faster. It is. You get a real feel for what that landlord's thinking rather than trying to interpret a text or an email. And I think if you are not afraid to pick up the phone and make a call, you are already steps ahead of the next property manager.
Awesome.
It's really important. Cool. We'll definitely have landlords who just say, do it, don't care, whatever you think, just let me know when it's done. Love them. They're amazing. But if you are afraid to pick up the phone, and so many young property managers are, then you're going to struggle. Really going to struggle.
Yeah, it's easy just to ignore a text or an email, or even lose an email, forget an email, because most of the time you're working with people that have got lots of inbox activity.
I do it myself. I'll read a text and go, yeah, I'll do that after, and then 2 days later I'm like scanning through it. Never got that person back. It's the worst feeling.
I've got a system now there. If I read something and I have to come back to it, I remark it as unread. So then I can come back to it, because otherwise it just ends up in the pool.
Down the stream.
Yeah. So at Upside, we talk a lot about doing things differently. What do you think that actually means from a day-to-day property management activity?
Day to day, obviously property management has to be done a certain way. We have to do viewings, we have to process applications. There's a lot of processes that just are done. Everyone does them essentially the same way. Again, I think it comes back to for us it comes down to having the time to have the communication, proper communication, making a phone call, talking to a landlord, really taking some time to drill down into the reference calls, making sure that little things like updating the landlord after the viewing. So many people will do 4 or 5 viewings and then a couple of weeks later give a landlord an update, and in the meantime, since they knew their tenant had given notice to when they first hear from you, it might be 10 days. They don't know whether you're advertising the property, they don't know whether you've shown anyone through. You've got to keep people updated. So I think that's the biggest difference. We have the time, we take the time, we make the time to make sure that our contacts, our landlords, our owners, our tradies are updated on what's going on every step.
Absolutely.
It's key.
If you were to bring on a new property today and you went and you did your first inspection, what are the first things that you would look for to maximise the return from that property?
So when I meet a landlord at a new property,
Yep.
we're looking at going to manage it.
Yeah.
Landlords often say to me, I'm looking for a tenant just like us. And would you live here, Mr. Landlord or Mrs. Landlord? And if there's any hesitation in that, then that tells me that they understand that there's some stuff to be done.
Okay.
And it's usually really basic stuff. We want in great tenants who want to move in and make it feel like their home. We want them to stay long term, so there's less downtime and rent. Every week, every year, the rent's coming in. We want them to stay. It's got to be just a neutral palette, right? We want nice, tidy curtains. We want fresh paint. We want, if we can, new carpet or carpet that's the same in the whole house. It's really basics. It's just so that people can picture their stuff in that home and know that they'll be comfortable there. So I look at those things first, and I think that's a place where landlords can usually spend a small amount of money to get a really decent return.
Yeah. And then, interestingly enough, a lot of people think that their houses are healthy home compliant if you live in it. And then when you go to rent your property out, you realise that it's not. So what are some of the things that are essential, compulsory for every home that's rented
So
out?
Healthy Homes covers 5 areas of compliance.
Okay.
Heating, insulation, draft stopping, ventilation and drainage.
Okay.
Those are the 5 areas.
Right.
And the things that catch people out when they've been living in a home and they feel like it's absolutely going to be compliant because they've lived there for all that time, sometimes the heating's not quite enough. So the heating has to heat the main living area, which would be the biggest space of living area. And that goes up to every point where you can close a door, and sometimes those open plan areas will be open right up a hallway, so all of that volume of that space is taken into account as well. Sometimes it needs a little heating top up. Gutters must be clear, and all the downpipes must go to a pickup point. So every now and then there'll be a downpipe on an older home especially that maybe just goes to the garden, so that will need to be picked up and taken away to a proper pickup point. In brand new homes, we sometimes get called out by the internal access garage door, where there'll be a big gap under it because the carpet in the hallway and concrete in there, and that's often the one thing that catches out in a new home. Range hoods and mechanical ventilation in kitchens and bathrooms is a must, and it must be ducted to the exterior of the property, not just into the ceiling cavity. Moisture barriers are part of that whole process. So if you've got a home on piles and there's an access to the space underneath, and great, you've got your insulation under there, but it's a dirt floor, then you'll need to put a polythene moisture barrier down there as well to stop that damp from coming up and keeping the house cooler.
And what are the biggest mistakes you see landlords make when they're managing their own properties or when they're choosing a property manager?
The biggest mistake that a landlord will make when they're managing their own property is not implement rent increases.
Right.
They get a great tenant, they settle in, they don't cause any trouble, they pay their rent every week, and the landlord says, I don't want them to move out, so I'm not going to put the rent up. And I see it a lot, and they'll come to me in 7 or 8 years' time when they've just decided it's too much work and they're ready to travel overseas or whatever the case may be, and can we manage it, and the tenant's paying $150 or $250 a week less than they should be. And obviously it's not fair to give a tenant a $250 a week rent increase. No. But we have to start then implementing 12 monthly rent increases to get them back on track. Yeah. That's the biggest one. And they're just doing themselves out of income. Often those landlords are topping up their mortgage payments or topping up for the insurance or the rates when they could have been maybe getting a lot more of that return from the tenants. It doesn't mean tenants are going to leave. It doesn't mean that. You will often see a tenant get a rent increase notification and they'll jump online and go, we'll find something cheaper. And then they realise that actually they're probably still getting cheapest rent anyway. Yeah. And so it's just that process of having a quick look and then go, no, we're going to stay here. We'll just pay that extra $10 a week and we're really happy. Yeah.
And what about when they're choosing a property manager?
Mistakes that landlords make when they're choosing a property manager? I think it's about having a really good conversation around what they want out of their property. are they in it for the long term?
Yeah.
Are they just holding it for 12 months until it sells? I think if a landlord doesn't actively have that conversation with the person they're looking to employ, it just makes that communication bit down the track a lot harder. And you've got to find out what your property manager knows. How are they going to contact you? How often are you going to hear from them? And make it known that that's what, as the landlord, that's what you require.
Your expectations.
And if they look to hesitate, a weekly call on a Friday, then they're not the property manager for you.
Yeah. So what's the goal for every property that you manage under Upside?
The goal for every property. Ideally, we want tenants who are going to move in, look after the property, pay their rent each and every week. Let me know if something is broken straight away so we can get onto it. Not upset their neighbours. And hopefully stay for the long term. Because for the landlord, that means that they've got continuity of income. They've got an asset that's going to appreciate and not depreciate. And if that relationship works really well, then everyone kind of gets out of it what they need. The tenant gets a lovely home to live in. The landlord gets some return to pay that mortgage, and their investments sitting there doing what it needs to do for them. And the property manager just does the check-in stuff. Make sure the compliance is current and everyone's happy. Yeah. Ideally, that's what happens with the property. It's really nice when it all comes together.
Yeah. And so when you are doing a viewing at a property and you've got potential tenants coming through the property, what is it that you're looking for in a tenant to team them up with that property?
First and foremost, a tenant needs to actually have a conversation with you when they come to the property. It's really hard when you meet people and they just wander through and say thanks and leave because you don't know who they are. So as much as we don't need a whole lot of information from people at an inspection at a viewing, we just want to have a little quick chat and find out a little bit about them. We want to know that they're looking for a long-term property, if it's a long-term tenancy. We want to know that they're not 15 people trying to fit into a 2-bedroom house. We want to know that they've got really good rental history, or that they've owned their own home, and we can do some background checks and make sure that they've been great homeowners.
The case of that it's not necessarily a popularity contest.
No.
You can like someone at a viewing, but then their references might not be amazing.
Yeah, it's happened to me many times.
We've already experienced that from viewings that we've done, that your potential, I guess, top tenant, when you start doing their background checks, have actually turned out to not be the best choice.
Never judge a book by its cover. I learned that really quickly in my career. I got caught a couple of times at the beginning, and I learned really fast that it doesn't matter what a person looks like or what car they drive. They still, if their priority is being a great tenant, they will pay their rent and they will keep it clean and tidy, and they will do all those things that we need them to do.
Yeah.
And the rest doesn't actually matter. I don't mind.
Exactly. And so one of the things at Upside that we are really passionate about, I think all of us, is making sure that the landlord's investment is getting them the best return. So what does that mean? How do we do that?
So that means making sure that if a landlord rings me today and says, hey, I need to put the property on the market, it might be that they just need to wash the driveway. I want to know that if that's how I work. If a landlord does that, I know that there's no maintenance outstanding. It's been kept up. The tenants have kept it really well. The gardens are all tidy. It's about just keeping that asset safe, not letting it deteriorate, making sure that it's always has some street appeal. When you drive past, if a landlord drives past, they're not going to go, "What? She didn't tell me that the hedge was 3 metres tall. What's going on?" I need to know that property could literally go on the market tomorrow with very little effort. It's kind of my go-to.
Yeah. Okay. What would you say to a landlord who was on the fence about changing property managers?
I guess then the question is, why have you been thinking about it? Is it that you're approving maintenance but not seeing invoices come through for weeks? Is it that you're not getting your end of month statements on time? Is it that you know that there's an inspection due, but you haven't had the report through, and you haven't had any communication about why maybe it's not been done. So what is it that's making you really question your current property manager? And then I can give you that information that explains that that's not how we do it. You definitely wouldn't. You're going to hear from me a lot more often, or not, if you don't want me to.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't want to hear from me, I will just leave you alone. Yeah.
So why are you second guessing your current property manager?
Yeah.
And how do we do it differently so that you won't have those concerns again?
And how often do you think that it comes down to price?
I actually don't think it comes down to price very much at all. Hardly ever. It literally comes down to communication. Without fail, I'm going to say 100% of the time.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
The
and that is so common in so many different industries.
It's not just property management, for sure.
You know, even if we're looking at trades, you know, the ones that succeed are the ones that get back to their customers, that send their invoices out when they're done.
We see it ourselves when you're looking to get services on board to do things for yourself, or just get a doctor's appointment or anything. If you get quick communication or a response that says, hey, I can't talk to you right now, but I'm going to call you back, you're like, cool, done, easy, you can check it off your list. But when you're constantly waiting for people to come back to you or reply to an email, it's the most frustrating thing. We all know it. And for landlords, it's no different. They just want to know what's going on with their biggest investment.
I think that's us.
Nice.
Thanks for sitting with me.
Thanks for joining us. For more episodes, like and subscribe, or visit us at www.upsidepm.co.nz.